Hey guys, it's Friday. You've made it through another week, and I want to talk to you guys today about intuition and synchronicity because these are two really big things that happen all of the time. But a lot of the times I think people tend to blow them off or not recognize them or not realize them. And then they kind of turn into these things that are sort of like ethereal. Like, what even is intuition? How do we understand this? How do we work with this? What really is synchronicity? What does it mean? What does any of this mean? So I've got lots of reasons why I want to talk about this. Like, number one, because it's just like something I love and it has been a part of my life my entire life. And I've got a lot of personal examples and stories around having used my intuition and synchronicity in my life that I am kind of getting excited about sharing with you guys. Like, literally, I have 30 plus years of examples and stories, and I've shared some with some of you. Excuse me. But, you know, I haven't shared a lot with a lot of people, and so for those of you that I've shared with, like, I've heard you guys talk about how much you love my crazy, wild stories, and so I thought it would be fun to share them because they really, I think they'll be helpful in helping you understand intuition and synchronicity a little bit more, because it can make it like a tangible thing, like a real, tangible, understandable, practical thing. Because it can be so confusing. Like, it's kind of like not really a tangible thing, intuition. You can't hold it in your hand. So how do you grasp the concept of it? That can be kind of hard. Hey, thanks for watching. Who's watching? Oh, little sneaky booger. In and out. Oh, in and out. This is the fun stuff with live. So I also want to let you guys know real quick, I put it up at the top here. You can book a complimentary call with me. Go ahead and click on that link to book a complimentary call. And I also want you guys to kind of post in the comments here, like, any questions that you have about anything I'm talking about, so that if I don't touch on it here, I can include like an answer or response to that, because I really want to help you guys understand this, because it's really exciting for me. Okay, so get to the point, right? So, intuition. Number one thing I want to tell you about, like, intuition is that, okay, so here's the thing. As you guys get to know me, and a lot of you know this already, so much information comes to me so quickly and in so many ways that getting it out into words is sometimes a struggle. And I'm sure that's probably the case for a lot of you too, who are very intuitive and empathic. So real quick, I kind of bounce around and I apologize for that, but track with me here. And leave me comments and questions so that I can address them. One more reason why I really want to talk about this with you guys is because you've probably noticed, and may have even been annoyed by it, that I have posted very frequently this purple card, this purple square that says take action on your inner wisdom. And I've noticed that I'm not getting any comments. I'm not getting any responses or engagement with that. And for me, it's super exciting. But I kind of tend to go to this place where I know things and I like experience things and feel things and hear things and all this stuff. And I assume that everyone else is right there on board with me and they've already known all of this too. So not always the case. And the reason for that, I think, is because sometimes it's kind of an intangible topic. So I want to make it tangible. I want to make it practical for you. And I want to see you guys commenting and responding, especially on that post, take action on your inner wisdom, because I'm asking you guys, like, how did you do it? Leave me a comment. Let me know. What did you do to take action on your inner wisdom today? But, like, some of you are probably going, well, what the fuck does that mean, right? And a lot of you know, like, I'm a normal, regular human being. A lot of times people see people who are, like, intuitive or empathic. Some people use the word psychic. And they look at them as knowing something more than someone else, which isn't necessarily always the case. So I want you guys to, like, realize that you have intuition and you experience synchronicity so much more than you probably realize, and I want to make it tangible for you. So, excuse me. So let's see, here we're going to start. Okay, so intuition, this is another thing. In talking to some of you guys, a lot of you had mentioned that one of the top reasons why you don't take action on your intuition is that you're afraid of the potential consequences of doing so, afraid that it will hurt somebody, afraid that it will upset somebody, afraid of what will happen if you do. So number one thing I want to tell you guys is intuition does not operate on fear. It's not fueled by fear. Now, the confusion happens in that because it's very common for people to have an intuitive knowing about something, like knowing they need to do something, knowing they need to stop doing something, knowing they need to go somewhere, knowing that something's going to happen, knowing that something's not going to happen. All of these are like intuitive messages that they're receiving, knowing something about somebody else without really having, a tangible reason or explanation as to why they would know that. All of these things are not fueled by fear. They're fueled by your source. Your intuition is a direct connection to your source, your creator, the universe, God, whatever you call it. It's like your line of communication. It's like immediate and direct, one-on-one conversation with you and your source. And so it's not fueled by fear, but it is common that when you receive a message from your source, you receive an intuitive message, a knowing, a feeling, that in response to that message, you will feel fear sometimes. And that's where we can kind of confuse the two, where intuition is not a scary thing and it's not fueled by fear. It's fueled by your source, but sometimes we will react in a fearful way because of the uncertainty, because of the confusion, because of not really knowing or understanding why you got this message. In the delivery of the message, there's no fear, but fear can sometimes crop up in response to the message, to receiving that intuitive message. And part of that, I think there's a lot of things that go into that. Part of that is timing. Like sometimes the message comes with advance warning, and you may know something that's going to happen years in advance. And so you have time, and then fear can crop up over that, because you may also know there's different levels of information that people get. You may get a very, very clear message. Like one of the things that I will be talking about probably later on, not in this time, but one of the very, very, very clear messages I got one time when I was in college was, she knows someone who needs socks. Like, that's pretty specific and pretty clear, right? But then, what do you do about that? There's all of this uncertainty around that. How do I handle this? Why am I getting this message? And that's where fear creeps up. But there is no fear in the delivery of the message. The message is what it is. It's 100% connection to source. And she knows someone who needs socks. It's a funny story. I'll tell you guys about it later. But sometimes you don't get that specific of a message. Sometimes you get a message like, something really bad's going to happen. Okay, that's pretty vague. Like, what's bad? What bad is going to happen, and when, and how, and to who, and what does this mean, and what's going to happen? But you know it's something bad. So that's an intuitive message. But there's no fear in the delivery. The delivery of the message is just a clear connection between you and source. And sure, maybe it may be a warning. Excuse me. But it's not fueled by fear. But fear can sometimes be the reaction to the message, to receiving the message. Sometimes even a little bit more information. It can be as vague as something bad's going to happen, or this doesn't feel right, or he doesn't feel like a safe person to be around, or I got a bad feeling about this. It can be a very vague message. It's still an intuitive message. Or it can be very, very, very specific, like she knows someone who needs socks. But it can even be more specific than that, too. It could even be, this is one of my other funny things, like get over in the left lane. Like, and nothing's going on around you, right? So why would you get that message? Get over in the left lane. That's pretty specific. Get over in the left lane right now. Maybe I'll get to that message later on too. Oh, I'm dying to tell you guys a million stories, but I could be on here for like, you know, months without stopping telling all of my stories. So I will get them out. I will drip them out as I can. But for now, I kind of want to lay the foundation of this because I really want to make this tangible for you guys. And understandable so that hopefully we can start like a dialogue and there can be more engagement, especially on these how did you take action on your inner wisdom posts. And even through all of my posts, you know, I want this stuff to make sense and I don't want it to be like some scary, weird thing out there. So the delivery and the message is a direct connection to your source. And there's no fear in that. It's not fueled by fear, it's fueled by source. But the confusion can often happen because fear can be a reaction to that message because it may be fairly vague, or even if it's specific, there may still be questions around it. So there can be a reaction of fear to the message, but the message and the delivery of it is not fueled by fear. It's fueled by your source. And that is love and guidance and protection. And we need to remember that. So our reaction to it may be something else that we need to deal with. But the intuition itself is not a bad thing, and it's not a scary thing. And the reason why we may react with fear sometimes is because it could be fairly vague and we don't really know what to do with it. Or it could be incredibly specific and there still may be questions about it. And then timing as well. So you may have advance warning of something that's going to happen, like a year or two in advance. And so there's time to linger of like, oh my God, this waiting period and all of this like mental churning of stress could happen. So, but that's something that we need to deal with within ourselves. There could also be an instant warning, like instantly right now, like get over in the left lane now. And that could trigger a fear in you, right? Because you don't necessarily know why. Or sometimes there's no warning, and this is the thing. Sometimes you know things, you get the intuitive message and you know things, and there's something you can do about it. And that's awesome. That's really like the best, you know? Okay, so you receive this message, get over in the left lane now, you get over, and then like something horrible maybe happens and you were, or was happening, but it didn't negatively affect anybody. Like it was some other situation, like a hole in the road, pothole in the road, or whatever, sinkhole in the road. So you avoided something. You sometimes you get the message and you can do something about it, and then you do, and that's awesome. Sometimes you get the message and you can do something about it and you don't, and then you kick yourself for it. We've all done that. There's no shame and guilt in that. We've all done it. It's just a learning process. Sometimes you know that something's going to happen and you can't do anything about it. And that is so frustrating and so frustrating. And so then fear crops up around that and stress and anxiety crops up around that. So how do you handle it, right? Sometimes things happen and you never even saw it coming. And that's really frustrating, especially for super highly intuitive and empathic people, because they're like, how could I have missed this? How did I not get the message, right? There's meaning in all of this. But for now, I just want to get this taking action on your inner wisdom, your intuition, and then synchronicity. These two things that are fairly confusing for people and vague, and I want to make them clear and tangible and specific. So, number one, intuition, again, just like I may say this over and over and over and over and over, but repetition is key to helping understand. And if you have questions, comment them below, send me a message, either way, whatever. I want to make sure I can help get some of these things clear for you, because they're amazing, amazing, and we have them for a reason. So, number one, intuition does not operate on fear. It is not fueled by fear. It is fueled by your source. But sometimes fear is a reaction to it. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So, stories. I guess you guys probably want a story. Eleni, oh, I love your energy too, girl. Good to see you. So, Now the sharing part. So which story should I start with? And so this one's kind of vague. I guess I'll start with this one because it's probably my earliest memory of having a moment of intuition. I was 5 years old. I was on the school bus coming home from school, and I noticed there was a car behind us, and there was a man driving the car, and I was sitting at the very, very back of the bus. And you know how you can, when you look out the back door of the school bus, there's like this square window. And I was looking out the window, and I could see this guy, and something inside me told me, that's a bad man. That's a bad man. Like, he's going to do something bad. And that scared me, right? Especially as a 5-year-old. I mean, even as a 38-year-old right now, that would probably scare me a little bit. Not quite as much as it did as a 5-year-old, because as a 5-year-old, you don't really know, all of the things that you can do. As a 38-year-old, I know a lot of things that I could do to handle that situation. But as a 5-year-old, it scared me. But something told me that's a bad man, and he was following the bus, and kids were getting off the bus. And as I saw us stop at each stop where kids would get off, I was watching that man, because I didn't know if he was going to like take one of them or do something to one of them, and it scared me. And so I just watched, and he just kept following at every stop. He just kept following, and I was staring at him like I was kind of a what's the word? Very sure of myself little girl, like no BS kind of girl, which I'm sure most of you would agree I am too, still to this day. Like, I'm not going to take any shit from anybody. Now, granted, I have taken shit from people over the years, because we all end up falling into those kind of traps, and it sucks, but it's part of our life lessons. But even at 5 years old, I was like, I got my eye on you, expletive. So I watched, because something inside me told me that's a bad man. And he wasn't doing anything, but I was watching, and I still knew with 100% certainty that was a bad man. And I didn't know exactly what that meant. So when we were getting close to my stop for me to get off the bus to go home, I was getting really nervous, because then I started to think maybe it was me that he was after. And so I told myself, if he's still behind the bus when we come to our stop, I'm not getting off. I'm just going to stay on the bus. And I was nervous. And finally, as we were making the last turn to come up to the stop for me to get off the bus, he turned the other direction, and I was so relieved. And I got off the bus, and I ran my little ass home, because I was still scared. But these are the things that I'm talking about. Like, the message itself is coming from source and is there to protect you and to keep you safe. It is not there to scare you. It's not there to scare you, but sometimes you have a reaction of fear to it. And they're two different things. The message and the reaction that you have to the message are two different things. So I want that to be clear. Let's see, what else? So that's like one of the earliest ones. And it was very vague. That's an example of a very vague, intuitive message. Okay, I'll do one more real quick. Should I do one more real quick? Should I leave you guys hanging? Okay, one more real quick. And because this is an example of a very, very specific one. And I was very naive. The next one that I can remember, I think I was 8 years old, but looking back at paperwork, court documents and stuff, I might have been anywhere between 8 and 10 years old. So I was in the front yard playing with the neighbor kids. I still remember their names. Their names were Joshua and Lindsay. Their brother and sister lived a couple houses down. And we were playing freeze tag. And Joshua was it. And all of a sudden, this intuitive message came to me. And this was the first time that I can remember an intuitive message being this strong. So strong that it literally stopped me in my tracks, and I kind of like bent over a little bit, like, oh my gosh. So I stopped and I froze, and like this information was coming to me. And Joshua goes, "What are you doing? I didn't get you." And I'm like, "I know." And he's like, "I didn't tag you. You can't freeze." And I was like, still trying to listen to the information that was coming to me. And so he was getting frustrated with me. And then finally I said, it's okay. And he's like, what are you doing? And I said, I have to go inside real quick. And he said, why? And I said, my parents are getting divorced. And so this is what I mean by like the message itself does not have fear in it. And as a child, like this didn't have like the connotation of bad man in it at all. And so there was nothing scary to me. And for a lot of kids, divorce can be scary. But the way this message, because this message was like an intuitive message directly coming from my source, there really was no fear in it. So I told Joshua, my parents are getting divorced, but he had a fearful reaction to it. And he said, no, they're not. And I said, yeah, they are. It's okay. And he's like, he started crying. And he's like, no. And I was like, Joshua, it's okay. Like, don't go anywhere. I will be right back. And he's like, they're not getting divorced. And I said, my dad, this is how specific the message was. I said, my dad is going to come out the door and walk down to the end of the driveway. And he's going to say, Jennifer, your mom and I need to talk to you. And then I will go inside because I'm trying to convince Joshua that like I will be right back and I still want to play, because these are the important things to a kid, right? Like, don't leave, I want to play. And so I'm trying to convince him, like, don't leave. And so my dad's going to come out and say, your mom and I need to talk to you. They're going to tell me they're getting divorced and I will be right back and we can keep playing. Like, not an issue. Very clear, very matter of fact, very specific. And so Joshua was like upset and crying, and I'm like, it's okay, I'll be right back, you know, but I didn't know at the time. I can see in hindsight now, I thought he was crying, well, he was crying because they were getting a divorce, and I thought he was crying because like maybe he thought I wasn't going to be back to play or something. So anyway, so sure enough, just then, my dad comes out, walks to the end of the driveway. Jennifer, your mom and I need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, I told him, I was like, I'll be right back. I go inside. They tell me they're getting divorced. And I'm like, okay. Like, I didn't have like a bad reaction to it, probably because I had this heads up on it. And coming from source, it was just very matter of fact thing. Like, this is what's happening. Like, the grass is green, the sky is blue. Like, you were just playing freeze tag. It was literally that matter of fact. And so it was very clear and made perfect sense to me. I go back outside, and then so we talk for a minute. I go back outside to play. Joshua's gone, and I'm like, oh, damn. Like, not cool, right? Frustrated kid. Frustrated and intuitive kid. So just going over this, I just want you guys to see some examples of how intuition really, really is a direct connection to your source, and it is fueled by source, and there's no fear in that. There's no fear in the message or the delivery of the message, but the confusion comes because sometimes we or other people will have a reaction to the message, to the intuitive message, and have some fear or emotional stuff around that, and that's normal, but they're two different things. The intuitive message and the reaction that we have to it, or the reaction that other people have to it, are two different things. And the important thing is it is a direct connection to your source. And again, frustrating because sometimes there's things that you'll know and you can do something about it, which is great, but sometimes there's things that you'll know and you can't do anything about it. And sometimes things will happen and you didn't even know, and that can be frustrating too. And then timing as well. Sometimes you'll have advance warning, sometimes it'll be an instant thing. And sometimes there'll be like no warning or anything because you didn't even have the knowing and things just happen. Those are the main things. So I just want you to think about these things too. Oh, one more thing, because synchronicity, I didn't talk or say much about synchronicity. Synchronicity, I believe, is the universe showing you that you're right on track. You're on the right path. And being on the right path means you're listening to and following, taking action on your intuition, your inner wisdom. So when you do this, when you connect with your intuition, with your source, and you listen and you get the messages, and then you take action on them, you will see things happening in your life that are shocking and exciting and synchronistic, because it's the universe kind of like giving you a high five. Like, good job. You took action on your inner wisdom. Like, here's a little awesome miracle. Like, oh my God, I love this synchronicity thing. So I got to run right now. I've got another appointment, but we will talk more about synchronicity and more about intuition, and I will share some more of my hilarious, crazy stories of intuition with you guys down the road coming up. Love you guys. Have a great day. Leave any comments or questions or whatever. You can message me if you don't want to post it here. And again, you can book a complimentary call. The link is right up top. Love you guys. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday.